what a fitting song for us to walk into, right? You got a bunch of heroes up here. All right, so we're gonna dive into some revenue management. We're gonna start off by introducing these guys real quick. I'm gonna let each one of them introduce themselves, primarily because they've got quite a bit of experience. So Chad, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you guys do at Southern?
Sure. My name is Chad Blankenship. I'm recently the Chief Technology Officer for Southern Vacation Rentals in the Panhandle of Florida and Coastal Alabama. We manage just over 1,300 vacation rentals in that area. Our property mix is about 70% condos, 30% homes. I've been with Southern for going on 11 years now.
Wow. John.
My name's John Dearlay, and I'm with Stay Alfred Vacation Rentals. We manage over 22,000 properties across 32 cities all over the country, and I previously headed up our revenue management department, and I'm currently exploring our efforts with other people's data and M&A.
Fantastic. Scott.
I'm Scott Brian with Vacasa. We manage now 25,000 properties all over the world. I'm head of analytics and revenue, so manage the yield management systems and marketing demand side as well.
Fantastic.
I'm Joshua Marquis. Started out with a company called Vacation Palm Springs, which Ben sold to Wyndham in June of 2015. I was the software developer. We worked on a proprietary PMS. Once Wyndham acquired us, worked my way up from the software guy to the revenue manager to GM, and then bailed because I was on a legacy salary so that you guys could get us. And then, so now I'm in Colorado running 2 shops, one in Steamboat and one in Breckenridge.
And so if you're in Atlanta and you get a fight, just get into a fight, look for Josh, because he's the biggest guy here. We called him the Vacation Palm Springs bouncer back in the day. But honestly, I'm glad to have you up here because I think you're one of the sharpest guys in the industry. So let me tell you real quick before we dive into this thing, why revenue management matters. Because we only have a fixed number of properties, right? And we can only squeeze so much revenue out of the business. So having a clearly defined strategy is paramount if you want to increase revenue and increase profitability. Now, before we dive into this and we get you guys to tell us a little bit about what it is you do and how you look at it, we're going to start at a macro level and kind of move to micro. Let's talk about the difference between revenue management and yield management and pricing. So revenue management is the overarching strategy. We're not going to get into pricing so much. We want to talk about the broader function here and why having that strategy is important to you. So I'll start back with Chad. So at a high level, what we want to understand is kind of what you guys do, what you're looking at a macro level at Southern. Tell us how you go about this and how you start pulling levers in the business.
I don't know how you cannot go in a 30-minute conversation on this, but I'll do my absolute best. So the biggest thing we want to do is to, sorry, I had to hold my mic up a little higher. The biggest thing we want to do is obviously align our goals with our homeowners' goals, and that's one of the biggest first steps is what is the homeowner's goal? As Jason talked about earlier, does this homeowner want, are they looking at just pure occupancy, or are they wanting to have, higher ADRs, which would then evolve into higher RevPAN? And then also we're going to get into this a little bit earlier, but RevPAW, which is revenue per available unit, that's another big one that we use to measure to help us, pull the levers that need to be pulled. If when you look at your RevPAW on a weekly basis, daily basis, or annual basis on a revenue level or on the company level, and that really helps you make those changes.
So what I'm taking away from this, and this is really important, and this is not something that would be discussed 20 years ago, but actually consulting the homeowner as to what they want out of the rental of their property. So that's really important. John, give us a little bit of insight into how you guys started looking at this.
Sure, absolutely. So we don't have a lot of owners in the way that a lot of traditional vacation rental people do. We pay them a lease and hope that they kind of stay out of our business. But what we do have to deal with is we've had very rapid growth, and we tend to distribute kind of a mix like more similar to the condo stuff, a lot of different inventory kind of under the same advertising banner. So we really look at RevPAR growth and trying to maximize RevPAR growth as our portfolio matures and trying to understand what data we can use that transfers to new portfolio that doesn't necessarily have the historical information, and then how to continue to grow that portfolio in the different phases of its maturity through our contracts.
Yeah, so I've always said this business would be great if there were no owners, right? And so you guys have figured that out. I'm joking. Scott, tell us a little bit about how you guys go about
Yeah, There's a few metrics that we really dive into that haven't been mentioned today. One of them is same-store sales, which you'll see in a lot of the retail markets, like Walmart will always talk about the same-store sales. How much did that property make that existed last year? How much did it make that same time this year? Because one of our goals is to maximize, and what we put out that our marketing isn't a secret. We tell homeowners we're going to make them more money than anybody else, and so how we ensure that we meet that is benchmarking the homeowners on if they're making more money every year, whether it's the data they provide us during onboarding, if it's a property that was with us before, or if it's an acquisition. Those acquisitions come with data that we then benchmark ourselves against to increase that amount every year.
Fantastic. Josh?
So I'm going to kind of echo Chad's sentiment there. I mean, we start off with a relationship with the owner. We want to make sure that we are matching performance year over year as best we can. And then, so it starts off with the relationship, and through the whole process, whether you're looking at ADR, RevPAR, any of that stuff, I don't even really look at RevPAR unless I'm looking at year over year, like business performance. I'm looking at homes that are underperforming year over year, some that are overperforming. I won't pull them back, but we try to figure out why. Where's their pricing at? How are they sitting? And as we go through this, to me, in the two markets that I'm in now and in the one that I was in before in Palm Springs, the most important thing is what's going on in the market currently. So year over year, it's a good gauge, and you want to be talking to your owners about that stuff. But a lot of times what we do is we're benchmarking our competition. So if a unit sits empty for some reason or books too early, books up till last minute, we can always talk to that owner about, hey, here's some screenshots, literally here's some screenshots of what your competition looked like on this day and why we did what we did. So it's an ongoing conversation.
So I think that's really interesting. I think one thing that I'm taking away from this, compared to years past, we were having a conversation in the hallway about how some of this kind of comes full circle. And 20 years ago, you would have never had a conversation with the owner about the success of the property because you were scared to get beat over the head by the owner, right? Now you're seeing folks pull owners in, have an intelligent conversation with them because, frankly, they've done something right in their life if they've got a second home in a resort market, right? So treat them more as an equal and work them through that process. So we're going to have some deeper dives here, and then we're going to have some rapid-fire questions. So as you guys look at this stuff, is there a system-generated tool that you're using in the business, or are you creating your own tools to manage, the data, look at the data and forecast this for your business?
So we both, obviously there's great ones that have already developed out there that we do utilize, but also we do create our own in-house analytical tools. And I really think that part of the success that you will have is really being able to look at the information as you want to look at it. Every market's different, every management company is different, and what benchmarks you really want to look at. And I think it was Cliff that said earlier, is figure out what information is that you're looking for, and then go try to figure out how to get it. So I do believe that you do need to have created ones, but we do create our own.
So you're pulling that into Excel, and what benchmarks, what metrics are you specifically looking at to develop your revenue management strategy?
So a little more sophisticated than Excel, but yeah. But what we're looking for on the benchmarks is going to be your RevPAN, RevPAR year over year. That's a huge one, as he was talking about doing that, and that's more on the business scale of it. But then really driving it down into each property level and understanding each property on the available nights versus owner booked nights. What's the ADR on that property? What's the occupancy rate? And then ultimately comparing that back and forth to the homeowner's goal that they set forth of saying, you have the one homeowner that says, look, I don't care if you rent my property out. This is the number I need to make, and that's all I need to do. I don't want to do much more than that. And then you have the homeowner that says, I need to be at 99% occupancy. How are you going to get me there? So really benchmarking those owners' goals to with what we can do, and then making sure that we have the tools and analytics that are readily available for that.
Fantastic. So John, are you guys taking more of a hotelier's approach to this? Are you looking at it in a different light? Are you managing it differently? And what are you looking at when you do that?
We've really taken influence from both the hotel kind of revenue management strategies and also what we see around us in our industry. Stay Alfred really, I think, tries really hard to learn from everybody else and looks at other solutions as always having something to offer or to integrate or to compare against. Kind of a story related to whether we use off-the-box stuff or kind of create our own is a couple years ago, we were using a third-party BI tool, which was really quite good, and we decided, well, we don't really want to pay for this anymore, so we'll do it ourselves. And we kind of pulled the trigger too quickly and did not have what we thought would be a solution ready when we killed it. And it kind of forced our revenue management team to have to be very creative and dig directly into being able to access our raw database and manipulate that data themselves. And that ended up being, even though it was really stressful for a very long time, it ended up being a really big boon for us because now we have a team that has developed a lot of tools that allows them to verify what other people bring to the table or has very good understanding of our own assumptions that allows us when we're talking to other providers or looking at other solutions or even just listening to other ideas to kind of have a much fuller understanding of our own data and then how it would work in that system and what kind of questions to ask.
So let me ask you this, what type of reservation system are you running?
We're running Streamline right now.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Chad?
We're running Track.
Okay. Scott, you guys have developed your own, and Josh?
We're on V12 for now. Yeah.
For now. Scott, tell us how you kind of harness all this data at Vacasa, because you guys really have your own data machine, right? With so many locations, and congratulations on the purchase. I think this is fantastic for the industry. That being said, how do you pull this together? Are there certain reports that you try to populate and disseminate and communicate on? How does that work for you guys more specifically?
Yeah, with any reporting, it's really about what does the audience want to get out of it. So at the executive level, there's KPIs that we look at on a regular cadence, mostly on the growth side. But within markets themselves, the people that actually interface with the homeowners, we have to give them the information and them the language and them the data to then communicate and have those dialogues with the homeowners. Because you can't have a homeowner going to a property manager on the ground and saying, hey, how are things going? And then not knowing how things are going. So we partner at the very regional level to make sure that everybody knows how the performance of the portfolios are doing. But at our scale, we have to automate all of that. So whenever we come with a new KPI or a new system or a new report, we have to always think about how do we scale that across all of our markets at the same time.
Fantastic. Josh, what are you guys looking at? I know you're a software engineer, operator. I'm expecting to hear something big here.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. So we're in the middle of training a new revenue manager. I've just kind of thrown her into the wolves. So I've been forcing her to kind of do things as manually as possible. So she's doing her own visual scrapes. I mean, she's doing all that sort of stuff. In a perfect world, 6 months from now, the way I used to do things when this was a full-time job for me was. I had software that was scraping HomeAway and VRBO. It just so happened that, in all three of the markets that I've worked in now, most of our competitors were on V12. The ones we want to look at,
Right.
to quote Cliff from earlier, more data is not always better. So, the Pareto principle, 80-20, we get a good data set where we can feel confident in it. And then we try to drive rates around that. So circle back, I digress there for a second. In those three markets, if everybody's on HomeAway and VRBO and they're also on V12, there's no way to manipulate the rate from their PMS, which is V12, to HomeAway. There's no middleman where you can mark it up what NextPacks will allow or Blue Tent's Boost will allow or something. So you can go to one place and scrape all of your competitors, provided they're participating on that platform. So that's kind of how it's worked, at least in the three markets that I'm in.
Interesting. So this is one question kind of Amy pushed a little bit as far as, you touched on this a little bit, but as far as segmentation, are you segmenting, when you look at your revenue management strategy, are you segmenting properties? Are you segmenting travelers? Because this hotel here has a revenue management strategy for different segments, right? They've got the business traveler, the conference traveler, I don't know who else would stay here besides a business traveler. So, yeah, maybe so, maybe a leisure traveler. But But that being said, are you segmenting properties? Are you looking at different types of of travelers? Are you looking at in season, out of season? Are the people different? Is there anything that you're doing specifically there in order to develop that strategy?
So on segmenting them, I think you have to do a hybrid approach and really look at it both ways in saying, look, we're going to group these types of homes together, these types of properties together. And then when you're looking, it can't be one or the other. It definitely has to be both ways in doing that. And they also have to work hand in hand together, where a lot of times the segmenting part of the property is coming from, by the travelers coming from the marketing team, but then when you're grouping the properties together based off of rates or occupancy and ADRs, that's obviously going to come from your revenue management team. So getting the cohesiveness between those, where they're really working together to ensure that does happen, would be extremely beneficial, and is extremely beneficial when that does happen.
So Chad, are you comparing more so against other vacation rental managers, or in other cases, because there's a lot of towers along the Gulf Coast, are you comparing against some of the hoteliers? How are you segmenting some of that out?
Yeah, so when we look at our benchmarking, obviously when we recap, we're using it against the industry in the area, but that's on the grand scheme of how we're doing as a company. When we're really benchmarking it, we're comparing it year over year on the properties and seeing how did this property produce this week, this time, this month, this day, last year, compared to where it's currently at. And then you have your subset of all those properties that are grouped together. And then you're saying, is this one in the top 10 or in the bottom 10, whatever it is on that one. So there's different benchmarks that you do use. The industry benchmark is good for future trending, but you don't make a ton of it. It helps you kind of drive where you need to make your decision. Yeah. But then you really have to go back through and look at the historical. So you can't just look at one or the other. I do believe all of them have to live together.
Fantastic. John, are you guys, segmenting? I mean, because for all intents and purposes, you've got apartments, and I think if you could explain that a little bit about how you're different maybe than the group. But I mean, are you comparing to other vacation rentals, or are you comparing, segmenting against hotels? How do you segment your book of business and develop a strategy there?
Yeah, so I believe we're all pretty similar in our type of inventory up here with being condos and homes, but but when we really segment it and we're really driving it, we are comparing it, when we're looking at the market, we're comparing it to other like types of properties or other companies in our industry, as much as you can obviously get that information for it, and really drive down to that. Resort Quest was always one, and now it's going to be Vacasa. It's going to be one-stop shop to go shop somebody instead of going 3 different websites. But really trying to get on like inventory and then trying to have those scraping tools readily available where you can group those on and make it more of an automated process. But trying to do like inventory is going to be the key there. I think that's the question. I apologize.
So John, tell us a little bit about your business and maybe take a little bit deeper dive into what it is you guys do. I mean, I know you mentioned it briefly, but are you comparing to other property managers or more so hoteliers?
So we're renting out apartments, usually large blocks in multifamily apartment complexes. We pretty much restrict our inventory to kind of downtown traditional hotel, usually with this current travel environment, good mix of leisure and business, year-round markets. The way we traditionally benchmark, first and foremost, we use our own data first.
Right.
There's a lot of problems. We look at the hotel data first because there's not as many other vacation rental operators in the area, particularly that are doing dedicated stuff. But it's also problematic to benchmark against hotel data because particularly in those downtown locations, there's a number of very different sales strategies that these hotels are using, and it's not always evident what they're doing and how their revenue is actualizing.
Is it coherent 100% of the time?
No.
Because from a traveler perspective, I don't understand it either sometimes.
Yeah, so I can give you an example. Some markets, if anyone's in the Nashville area, that market has really, really strong occupancies, arguably probably some of the best in the country, very strong leisure, and their transient rates, you can use those and follow those transient rates pretty well. But you go to a market like downtown Phoenix, which isn't like Scottsdale or near the resorts, and there's a number of very, very large, beautiful hotels, and their entire pricing strategy for transient is like, we don't do it. So, I bet you imagine that July in Phoenix is probably not a great time to go. Their difference in rates between what we would consider their high and their low season is maybe $100. So they go from $250 to $350. But we know when looking at their actualized revenue data that their RevPARs are barely $100. So if you're just using the scrape data and you don't understand the different ways that these competitors are selling, it can have a big impact in terms of what you're doing, and it may not match what's actually occurring in the marketplace.
That's really interesting. So I think what I'm taking away there is you're looking at what's being advertised, but you're also comparing it to the backside data. Is that through a STAR report? Is that through how are you getting some of the actual data?
Yeah, so I know in kind of the locations we're in, that STAR provides very, very good actuals.
Yeah.
At least, definitely in the United States and in these downtown locations. We've started to look and continue to communicate over the last couple of years, and especially in the last 6 months, more and more with the kind of vacation rental side. We know that data is important, and it seems like there's some work going on behind the scenes when you talk to Transparent and AirDNA and Key Data, where they're all making efforts to consolidate actualized data. I'm not sure the scope that each one really has yet, and I'm not sure what the endpoint is in order for someone to get a pretty good cross-section of the actualized data. But as that moves further and further in that direction, I think it's going to be extremely beneficial for pretty much everyone in the industry.
Yeah, it's going to be huge for the industry, and we're certainly excited about getting that data. So Scott, I would imagine you're a bit of a hybrid, right? Because you guys do have some urban stuff. Yep. You do have some guaranteed type products, some leasing product. What are you comparing against? How are you segmenting this? Do you guys look at business travelers? Are you doing groups? Are you doing anything that would affect your revenue management strategy?
We don't do too much on the group booking side, on the
Yeah.
urban side too much. Not yet. But we do look at the urban portfolio quite a bit differently. We do leverage STAR reports and hotel level data.
Wow, okay.
But across all of the data, one of the challenges that we've been working through is that advertised rates is not the gross price. And so how do you, when AirDNA and all these companies scrape the data, they don't scrape the cleaning fees or the booking fees or the channel fees or all the other fees that I think Scott Legat has an Excel spreadsheet a couple pages deep on all the fees you can add. How do you get through that noise actually to a full gross price that a customer would pay? And that's one of the challenges that we're working through right now across all of these segments, where a hotel is $100 a night, but they don't charge a cleaning fee. Where this house right here is $100 a night, but it charges a $200 cleaning fee. How do you back into how many nights are likely to book, divide the cleaning fee by that, distribute it over to get a full gross price comparison?
Interesting. So Josh, you guys are virtually 100% leisure, right? 100% vacation.
Yes.
So I know with some of the steamboat stuff, you've got condos, you've got houses. How do you segment, your business and develop a strategy, that works for you all?
So, condo markets, at least in the ski areas that I'm in, it tends to be, this was kind of a learning experience for me because it's more of a commodity, right? And so, every owner has the prettiest baby, right? So they want their condo or whatever to be the most expensive one or whatnot. So you've got to manage through that because, and then, when you're doing your comp set, I usually work from the inside out. So you'll start with a complex and then maybe do, half-mile radius or something. And then you can also segment by features. In our two markets, the two things that matter most are private hot tubs and ski in, ski out. Ski in, ski out is irrelevant during the summer, so you gotta wipe that away. So you can't even take your winter rates into consideration when you're looking at your summer rates. So it varies how you lump them together. So I would say complex first, and then within that complex you got bedroom size and then amenities. I don't even see much rate difference between first floor and fourth floor. Typically, what you'll have, somebody who's on the fourth floor has got a nicer unit that takes care of itself, but the floor is almost irrelevant. So I think in a commodity market, that's how it would work. That's how it works. In we're like in Palm Springs, where we just had as many as 500 homes that were all 3-bedroom and above, all had a private pool. Each one of those was a beautiful baby. So they could be priced individually a little bit, and then it's different for every market. Palm Springs, if it was built by a specific architect, that would draw a premium.
Right.
You know, if it was period correct as far as the furnishings, that would draw another premium. So it just depends. I mean, I think the biggest part is like, you have to have a human touch. People have to, you have to be talking to your owners. You have to dig in and see what matters.
So with regard to the human touch, and we'll kind of go back this way, change directions here. You're doing things manual, right? You're forcing your revenue manager to get in and turn some cranks. What about, terms and conditions and things of that nature? Are your terms and conditions and your ancillary fees, do they positively affect your strategy? Do you think folks just don't notice? Or do you think in certain cases it adversely affects your strategy? And I'm talking about, cancellation policy, deposit policy, things of that nature. I mean, the ancillary fees, we've got to drive the distribution channels crazy because everybody charges a different fee on a different night, a different day, a different time, whatever it may be. How are you guys handling all that?
So, again, it all comes back to the market, what's going on in the market. So we try to be consistent with the competitors that we're looking at. We basically discount RBOs because it's too much to track. So we're only looking at a few of our competitors in either the market. Again, back to 80-20. Like we can look at a subset that gives us a good data set. Especially these are competitors that are also professional property managers. So some competitors may or may not be in the crowd here. They're definitely at Verma. They're definitely at some of the other places. This is year one, but we're competing with those folks. Those are the folks that I'm worried about. So keeping fees in line with what they're doing within reason. We still got to drive the bottom line. It's a business.
Right.
So and there's cost of doing business. So if our cleaning fees go up, or our cleaning costs go up, we're watching it. We've got to raise it accordingly. Sometimes if it is going to negatively impact us, then we split the hit on the rent side of things with the owner. And then we try to communicate that as best we can.
Right. Scott, you guys, historically have had, some standard practices across the business. You've now since acquired a business that, has, probably less standardization. Still within a range, right? But less standardization. Are you guys looking? All right, number one, how do terms and conditions affect your revenue management, strategy? And then, are you looking to take that same standardization approach to your newly acquired company?
I'll try to go through those questions and remind me if I don't get them all. So in terms of terms and conditions, that's a really interesting one. We would love to move to the Southwest model where you can cancel at any point. But that last minute cancellation for New Year's Eve in a ski market and you don't refill it, within 12 hours, you lose that night, and
you lose that homeowner.
You lose that homeowner. So it's how do you? These guys who don't have the homeowners don't have to worry about it, and I'm guessing they're urban, especially with the urban travel, business travelers. They probably have the most flexible cancellation policy on this stage. So it's a balance. It depends on the market, depends on the customers you're going after. But where we've really seen flexibility in policies really impact the bottom line is does it open up demand segments? And so to get onto Airbnb's professional filter where somebody clicks a button and 95% of your competitors go away, to be able to show up in there, you have to have a more flexible cancellation policy.
Right.
So when you can get rid of 95% of your competitors by having the increased risk of cancellation, that's where you see the higher revenue impact.
And are all of your properties participating in that?
Just the urban, more in the urban markets where we do the master leases and don't have the owners involved. But we do, yeah.
So outside of that, are there? Do you feel like, obviously with Airbnb that's important, but do you feel like there's any more aggressive terms and conditions that aid in your revenue management strategy, aid in growth and things like that?
Not unless you can market it and create the top of funnel improvement.
Gotcha.
Most people, how many people know and have read their Apple terms and conditions? You just click through it. People don't see that you have to be 25 years old to rent. People don't read that you can't bring 48 people over for lunch in a six occupancy. They don't read any of that. They don't read any of the descriptions. That was one of the things we A/B tested of like, we're paying copywriters to write these really expensive long descriptions. People don't read it. It doesn't drive conversion really. And so with these, it's really about how can you get to that top of funnel, and it's playing the games with the OTAs essentially.
So to take a little bit deeper dive into the Wyndham acquisition, do you expect to homogenize some of those terms and conditions, or run that differently? So that I would think homogenizing, standardizing to a certain level would allow you to manage from the mothership down, and allow you to have more insight and control. Is that something you guys are looking at right now?
We've done, I think, 80 acquisitions of various sizes, from 6 properties to now 10,000. And it's the same with going into a new market as it is bringing in all these new employees, these new homeowners, and their prior guests into it. You have to have some standardization to scale. And so what we refer to it as is standardized flexibility. And we put kind of a bear hug around it and say, these are the things you can do in here, but we give a lot of latitude locally to get the job done, because at the end of the day, it's how do we retain the homeowners. We spent a lot to buy Wyndham. If we were to convert all the homeowners and processes, all of the employee processes, we would lose the employees, and I think everybody in here values those more than anything these days. Yeah. And then the homeowners, which you value second to your employees. So going in and just saying, we are the mothership, this is how you're going to do things, it wouldn't work. It would break everything, everybody would churn.
I think that's smart. So John, as it relates to your business, I mean, are you guys just running hotel terms? I mean, is it pay on arrival? How does that work, and how does it affect your strategy?
Sure. Actually, I think you would be surprised to note that we have a fairly strict cancellation policy. We brought on a lot of hotel people and have gone to a number of hotel conferences because we kind of sit between both spaces. And you'd be surprised by how many people are like, oh my gosh, you guys get payment up front? We wish our industry did that, but it's too late for us.
Thank you for saying that, because I feel like we all get pressured to move to payment on arrival because everybody's doing it. So you're going against the grain there.
Yeah, I think there are, as we've grown and scaled, there are certain markets where to be competitive, we really have to be more flexible. I think we've been a little slow on the uptake on those. One, because we don't want to give up too much. Like, it is very beneficial for us to be able to take money up front, to have that kind of stabilized booking window, and then also now be able to opt for an option either through a corporate sales channel or hopefully in the future more sophisticated distribution options than are maybe currently offered by some of the channel managers right now. And that might occur as we take control over more of those connections ourselves, and I think you'll see that follow. Because the OTAs really do have very sophisticated distribution rules that are available to hotels who have direct connected in terms of length of stay, cancellation, and just the way rates relate to that.
Hey, rate parity being one of them, right? I mean,
yeah, I think we'll kind of avoid rate parity for a little while, and I think
I'm going to say a little prayer.
and Booking.com doesn't seem to be that concerned about it. Their whole policy is like, if someone says it, we'll match it, and you just have to deal with it. But they have very sophisticated tools to be able to offer different, that right price at the right time to the right guest. That I just don't think that this industry has really gotten to the point where they can take advantage of them. And I think cancellation policy will become something that the flexibility to offer a shorter cancellation policy outside of your window is really beneficial. Most PMSs and channel managers aren't taking advantage of that yet with the OTAs, though the OTAs do have the capability to accept that kind of rate.
That's interesting. I think my takeaway there is frankly, just not conforming, doing what's best for my business, my clients, moving forward. And just because someone says I need to do it, it doesn't mean that you should do it. So Chad, you guys, do you have different terms for different units? And because you've got the condo product, more of a condo hotel type product, but then you've also got the big beachfront home where you've got to take different deposits and things in advance. And what kind of deposits are you guys taking on the different properties, and does that affect your strategy?
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of echo what everybody else said here is flexibility on it, and I think we all can agree in this room that your booking window on a 9-bedroom large home is going to be a lot further out than a studio or 1-bedroom type property, and you need to have flexibility in those rules, but then also within your fee structures as well, but then also understanding. We keep talking about markets, and we even get a little more micro than that, and really start understanding each complex. Who's the biggest players in this complex? What are they charging the complex? And then have flexibility on those different types of things. And then also looking at on your OTAs and saying, should we offer a different cancellation policy for this particular OTA compared to what we're actually offering in the company? And then how do you actually implement that on the company scale? Is definitely challenges that we've seen, but definitely something that needs to be looked into. I think the booking windows, and when you look at cancellation policies, is going to be a huge thing, because to book a 1-bedroom condo within 3 days of arrival is not as much difficult as is a 9-bedroom house that sleeps 40 people.
So each of you have one common denominator up here. You all have technically condos that conform more towards a hotel environment, or more like a hotel environment. Does your revenue management strategy differ through the distribution channels? Because in a typical hotelier's environment, you can set rates for different channels. You can sell early or sell late and raise and lower. And do you have a different strategy through the distribution channels, Josh? In your particular market, are you still the best rate? How does that work within your overall strategy?
So for us, I'm in Breckenridge and Steamboat. Breckenridge is about an hour from Denver, so it's a drive market. Even with the snow, they do a pretty good job of keeping the 70 clear. Steamboat's a destination market, so it's a 3-hour drive, best case scenario in the winter. And it's a flight in. So even though they might be booking a 1-bedroom condo, it still does take a little bit more planning. So Steamboat's a little bit different than Breckenridge. Again, it comes back to the market and who's coming, what's your demographic, and how do they get there. You got a drive-to market that you might be in traffic coming up to Breckenridge. So the cancellation policy and stuff, you can do a weekend push like on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can generate a Thursday, Friday arrival, but Steamboat, it's less so. So it's less channel dependent. Okay. Than for at least for me in my markets.
That's interesting.
Than location specific, and then how the guest's going to get here.
So how are you guys, Scott? How are you guys using the channels to effectuate your strategy? I mean, is that something you're focused in on? Are you bleeding some inventory out early, or do you have a strategy in and around that, or how's that working at Vacasa?
All of that is geoseasonal, where if only one of your 100 condos is going to book, you want to be the first person to book it. But if all 100 are going to book, you want to be essentially the last, most expensive to book. So it's entirely geoseasonal, based on the market, based on if it's fly to, longer destination, all of the different hub and spokes from each of the metro centers into the vacation markets, essentially. But within the OTAs themselves, there is rate parity that it's just not apparent to us, where Expedia scrapes Booking.com and finds your listings, and if it's out of rate parity, they tank your rankings. And right. they may or may not tell you that, but we're pretty sure. So they might not demand rate parity, but there's ways they can create rate parity or force your hand on it. But we do look at, within the OTAs, some OTAs are better at the multi-unit listing products. So like Expedia, doing when you're competing against hotels, traditional hotels, doing the type of, this is the ocean view versus the ocean front versus the garden view. And then you can play Tetris and put the reservations in there, very hotel style. That works really well for Expedia. Would never work for HomeAway or anything, right. Airbnb, anything like that.
So we got a couple minutes left. John, tell me, how does that work for you? Are you guys doing anything different that we need to be aware of? What's going on at Stay Offered?
I think for us, I know there's a lot of differences in terms of the traditional vacation rental and what we do, but I think a big push for us, we're also a high-touch revenue management team, a lot of human intervention at this current state, particularly with our growth. And we really try to look at data at the daily level. You know, our revenue managers look at individual room, like our segmentation is individual room types in buildings. So pretty segmented for our kind of portfolio.
So more so room types, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're
so like
yeah.
a 2-bedroom in, yeah, I think we have a building down here called Dwell, ATL, or a couple other buildings in Atlanta that if there might be 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms, those room types are all grouped together. So all the 1-bedrooms are in one, all the 2-bedrooms.
Gotcha.
That's kind of our lowest level of segmentation. And then we try to look at stuff at the daily level. And we look at last year and same time last year, how much have we sold kind of as of this point last year. And we try to improve. We don't necessarily try to improve each individual day because there's an ebb and flow in your demand. So then we look at how can we take that daily level. And since we have it at the daily level, you can always find ways to aggregate it up. It's very hard to break it down if you're holding your data at too high of a level and then you want to go back. If you've got, for a long time, we had our data at the monthly level and we just got to a point where we couldn't make decisions that didn't have like a 15% or 20% variance. And we needed to spend a lot of time to go back through our reservations and then store all that data at the daily level. We now do all of our forecasting at that daily level, but it doesn't mean that we look at that data all the time at the daily level, especially when we're reporting up or making higher level business decisions.
I think it's really interesting in that you're looking at unit type. Most of us are relegated to specific units, and you're probably doing a little bit of a bifurcated approach, and you're probably
I avoided at all costs. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chad, lastly, I'll just ask you one quick last question. Are you looking at unit type? You know, are you looking at all the 1-bedroom condos and making a decision there as a part of your strategy, or are you looking at each individual generic unit, the specific unit?
Yeah, so I kind of view it as kind of a funnel, right? So we start with our inventory, and then we kind of drill down and figure out at which level is, so company level, if we're up, 10%, but then this segment of 1-bedroom condos is down 2%, then drilling down those 1-bedroom condos into each, what we would classify as a rate type, which then breaks it out by views, if it by, location, all of that. So then drilling down that level, then getting onto that specific level. So we start a very micro and we end extremely macro in doing that, which helps you high level, but then you ultimately get your end results of what's driving things up or down by getting so micro.
Fantastic. Well, this is certainly a topic I think we could talk about for hours on end, but Simon is standing up, so that means it's time for me to wrap it up. Thank you guys very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you, gentlemen. As Ben has alluded to, we could have spoken for hours. Great content, great answers, great questions, great moderation. What I enjoyed in this session a lot is that it's so much fun to moderate a panel where you have private companies answering questions, right?